And then I had a personal experience right through this journey in London. I ended up seeing a craft. And this was like a 45-minute stare up in the sky, very like couldn't go wrong, light as day, called other friends from inside, like, hey, are you seeing what I'm seeing?
Oh my God, you've been involved in so many different projects, some massive names, James Bond, Deadpool, and Fast and Furious. You've done commercials and TV, movies and music videos.
They're basically what how we explain it is we are your descendants, like we exist only because of you. And I was shocked when I heard that. I was like, wow. And so the Voynich manuscript was something I started digging in. And that led me into a world of anomalies because at the same time, I started to ask the question, are we living in God's head? And this was a book I started writing.
The following is a conversation with Uzair Merchant. Uzair, also known as Uzi, but not like the gun, is a director and production designer behind some of the biggest movies out there, like James Bond, Fast and Furious, Deadpool, Superman, Misfits, Star Trek, to name but a few. As well as TV and commercial work, Uzair is also a writer and an entrepreneur. And in today's episode, we talk about Uzair's own UFO UAP sighting, his career in film and its origins, as well as his work and research into the phenomena. He's such a warm and open soul and a hugely talented young man whose work we will have seen in theatres and on our TV screens over the years. So, the following is my conversation with Uzair Merchant. Okay, well, look, firstly, wow. I mean, I was looking through whenever I do any, whenever I do an interview, I always obviously do the research behind a person. So I've got, a bit of an idea of who they are. Oh my God, you've been involved in so many different projects, some massive names, James Bond, Deadpool, and Fast and Furious. You've done commercials and TV, movies and music videos. Wow. Before we get into kind of the UFO UAP stuff, if that's okay, like how did you get into filmmaking and sort of design and all the stuff that goes into making some incredible movies?
I was born into the business. It chose me. I didn't choose it. It's a true story. My mom was pregnant with me on a set. So the path chose me. And I think the only way for me to explain that is people find it hard to understand that one person can do many things. And for me, because I did many things growing up, um, just, people don't even know this, but I used to VR game test back in 2001 when no one knew what, VR was, when I was in like not even middle school. And so it's like I was living in a world of where I was like, hey, I can do and create in different forms, and art is my language. I think film just became the automatic end product of me wanting to tell stories. So I started out in music from DJing to then doing live sound, then got into photography. Uh, but I grew up in a workshop. My dad was an interior designer. So I always had design right there. And for me, design was always important. Art was always important. But then film was that place where all of that came together. And for me, telling stories from a point of why we tell stories is based off intention was always the most important thing. So yeah, I started out in the business now 16 years ago. Um, Started out doing everything from making the teas and coffees all the way around to then jumping around from short films to TV to then, feature and kind of finding my path through. So that's kind of why I got into film. The path I chose of going down production design was because for me to become a director, I looked at always certain filmmakers that inspired me. And most of them came from the art department. James Cameron, Ridley Scott, Hitchcock, Tim Burton. They all came from that design background. And so for me, I'm like, hey, you know what? If this is the world I want to tell, and these are the stories I want to tell, and I was always so close to design, like I'm gonna go down and do that. But funny enough, turns out, you go down a path and realize, well, there's a bigger niche down here than there is here. So I ended up actually designing a lot more and slowly making my way into directing. So I write and direct and design, and I choose my projects really based on how best I can add value to it. So sometimes right place, right time, sometimes not. I'm not the person that joined this business for the money. I joined this just because this is all I know how to do.
Awesome, man. You're very good at it. Very good at it. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, let's jump into the UFO UAP subject. So I'm kind of fascinated to know where it started with you and what first kind of piqued your interest in the field.
Okay, let's say this began when I was 8, 9. Started asking the question, why are we here? Why are we on this planet? What's the basis of it? So, I'm Muslim by faith, and you go through this process of growing up in a place where people are like, hey, you know what? Don't ask questions. Don't ask questions. Don't ask questions. And then right when I got into university, by the way, I studied in the UK. I was in the UK for about 6, 7 years. I studied in Nottingham, at Nottingham-Trent. And I was in university, and I first came across this show called Ancient Aliens,
Right.
and Eric von Daniken's book, and Chariots of the Gods. If you, I'm sure you know the book, Chariots of the Gods. And in that, Eric von Daniken kind of has all these crazy, bizarre questions and throws it out. And then there was something there on the Book of Enoch, and it very, really, really fascinated me because at the same time I started writing my first feature film, which is called Elixir of Life, which is part of my Marvel universe, kind of, that I've been building out for a decade. And so Elixir of Life is facts and myths to create fiction. It's Adam and Eve story. And it's based off something called the Voynich manuscript or the Voynich manuscript. And I don't know if you've come across this book, but you'll find it very fascinating. It's the world's most mysterious book. It existed, they've dated back to the 12th century, and it was with, I think, it was with multiple agencies, with the Vatican and with the policing agencies for a long time. And then they put it out online because no one knew what language it's in, where it came from, and who wrote it. Yet it has 6 different visualizations of sciences from today, from details of umbilical cords to broken down sciences where they didn't know that information at that time. And so it's got visualizations. So I was like, hey, you know what? I'm going to take this book and I'm going to turn it into, what if Adam existed through multiple times, and so did Eve. And maybe this was the book that, obviously hypothetically, that Adam wrote between past, present, and future. And so the Voynich manuscript is something I started digging in. And that led me into a world of anomalies because at the same time, I started to ask the question, are we living in God's head? And this was a book I started writing 10 years ago. And I'm currently in the process of finally putting it together. And hopefully this year is when I want to release it. And so this book of Are We Living in God's Head is a question where I took every single religious book that I could get my hands on and started breaking it down with science, facts from data, from NASA, from everything I could get my hands on. So Tao Te Ching, the Bible, the Torah, the Bhagavad Gita, the Quran multiple times, the Vedas, all of it. Let's go break this down. And funny enough, the Quran was the only place, after going through all of that, I found that housed everything from every other religion without taking sides. And it was completely open, unbiased, completely. That acknowledged every religion, that acknowledged every race, that no other book did. So I started breaking it down more and more. And funny enough, the first line in the Quran is Allah, the Lord of the worlds. Allah being God, Lord of the worlds. It's plural. S, not world, plural. And so I started to dig that further. And I'm like, wait, how? Like, this is something that's right there. It's the first sentence. So it's impossible to ignore. And you start breaking it down. And then it's actually right there in your face the entire time. The entire religion talks about other beings that we exist with, which some people call jinn kind, um, that exist. You then have an entire basis of other creatures and other beings that exist in this world that is spoken about. And I'm like, this is impossible to ignore. And so why aren't we tapping into more of this side? And so I started going deeper. And then you find out about the pyramids and blah, 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 blah. And then there was one fact that completely just took me on the other side of the fence, which was the pyramids of Giza are on the same latitude as the pyramids of Mexico. And on the same latitude, I think, which is the 38th latitude, if I'm not mistaken. And on that latitude is also the Bermuda Triangle and the Dragon's Triangle. And the fact that the pyramids of Giza, the biggest one, is I think Point 0.3, if I'm not mistaken, point 0.3 decimal places exactly to the same size as the one in Mexico. It's like, I'm sorry, what? How? Who was doing it? How were they doing it? And then I had a personal experience right through this journey in London. I ended up seeing a craft. And this was like a 45-minute stare up in the sky, very like couldn't go wrong, light as day, called other friends from inside, like, hey, are you seeing what I'm seeing? This triangular shaped object, it's there, you can't hear any sound, but it was going up and down, but able to take turns at a speed that aircraft don't turn. Aircraft have circumference, which they turn in. And this was 2011 or 2012, 2012, I think. And is you don't have drones just flying around that time, but even if it was drones, there's certain limitations. But it was triangular, had these lights underneath. It was every time it would come to a point to turn, it would flash light and then turn and go back. And then we saw it come all the way down where we could feel this hovering sound almost. And then we watched it go out into the stratosphere. And that's it. There was no coming back for me after that. It was just like, okay, this is just a whole different world that no one's. And then I used to follow Twitter accounts of sightings, and I would like literally try to almost chase it. And then Dr. Stephen Greer came up with all of his stuff and breaking down how consciousness is a medium of language, which is part of my book. And I'm like, this exists, they've existed over time, they've existed beyond us. And it's just so much out there that it's just impossible to deny. Like, they've been around. And for us to think that we're the only species that we're here is crazy because they're finding proof that, on Mars there used to be existence of life. And it's like, well, something happened. And funny enough, if you read the Bhagavad Gita and stuff like that, which is the Hinduism book, there's an entire chapter, by the way, called Vimanas, which translates to flying machine. Like literally the entire chapter called Vimana translates to flying machine that has details, and I'm talking very scientifically deep details of using mercury for levitation and entire like schematics of what a Vimana looks like, which is a UFO, because they've had people who followed that and try to build models. And it's exactly of what you would think. So if you ever see a Hindu temple, the top part of it, which is almost like the spire, the circular bit, whoa, I didn't meant to do hearts there, but the hearts came up. It's new Zoom, thank you. Uh,
Meant to be.
right? And so you have these little spires on the top, and they've got these little circular kind of discs. They look like UFOs. And when we're done with this call, just Google it. Google any Hindu temple. You're gonna see this, and that's called Vimana, and which literally looks like a flying saucer sitting on the top of a machine. And I'm like, whoa. Then I came across the astronaut in South America, the first astronaut, where Pakal, I think it was King Pakal, where it's the Mayan astronaut where he's sitting looking upwards, like the painting is like looking upwards. And they built a model of that painting. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's a full 3D model where you can see him with an apparatus with pedals literally of what looks like a spaceship now, which SpaceX is making. And he's sitting there on a seat looking up with binoculars and everything. He's as if he's ready to take off. And I'm like, and people need more proof. Like,
Yeah.
seriously. Like, yeah, bro, I can go on about this. But yeah, so I went through this journey of one by one, things kept unfolding of me just diving through the research of like why and how and why and how. And it was just me asking the question again and again, well, why are we not? And 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 yeah, and I think we're just coming to a time wherein contact's just probably just around the corner. But I've come to the understanding that human beings need to up their frequency to understand why our purpose exists on Earth, to understand why we need to make contact, and it has to be made in peace, not in any way else. And I think currently the world is so volatile, so much hate, so much crime, so much of double standards happening that you can't have contact because it will completely throw us
Mm.
off the boat. And so for us to actually live, we can barely live with animals who are kind to us. We can barely live with beings who we claim to take their land and claim that it's our own. You know, you see what's happening in Palestine, see what's happening with the indigenous community, see what's happening through Africa. We barely live with our own species, and people expect us to live with other species. How? Not going to happen. So that's my understanding. I think we have to increase our frequency to the point that we understand the soul's purpose, not the mind, but
Yeah.
the soul's purpose. And if we get to that point as an overall society, then it's like, okay, now we're ready to upgrade.
Yeah. What was it like? So, just coming back to your sighting, there's a lot of people see things on their own, and it's difficult for them to kind of share it with other people because it's almost this, well, did I see it? Didn't I see it? But when they've seen it with other people and they've got that corroborative kind of the witness
Yeah,
testimony to speak, it's so much more powerful and they feel more able to kind of share it. Well, I saw it, but also these people saw it. How did you? So, you saw it with some of your friends at the same
in
time
London.
in London.
Yeah, yeah.
Whereabouts were you? What part of London?
Ealing.
Ealing. Okay.
Yeah, so we were in the backyard, literally in the back of my friend's house, chilling, just sitting down, a bunch of film students around. And that's why we saw it. And the funny thing is, I don't know if it affected them as much as it affected me. Like we saw it and everyone went, "Oh my God, oh my God." And then I think after some time, everyone kind of just went on with their life. Like, yeah, we saw something. But to me, it was like, I can't get it out of my head. And I think partly because I was already kind of deep into that world, that for me to then experience it was like, what did I just see? Whereas for them, it was like, yeah, we saw something. And we're not going to go digging or whatever. But I really didn't think it made as much impact to them as it did to me because it kind of shook me upside down where I was like, okay, this is nuts. And then I start talking to other people who are like, yeah, I saw this as a kid. I saw that as a kid. I saw that as a kid. And I found a few people after that, like friends who I knew for a few years that I was like, hey, listen, I saw this thing. I was like, listen, okay, Uzi, I didn't want to talk about it because I thought people were thinking crazy. But when I was a kid, this happened. And I was like, oh, you too? You saw this? Blah, blah, blah. And, a friend of mine in Egypt had this experience of seeing this massive UFO that was able to just come above them. And I think it was her sister or cousin showed up, massive thing hovering above them, shining light. And then went, boom, disappeared and showed up a few kilometers later. Boom. And then it showed up a few kilometers later. She was like, we were shocked. We promised to never talk about it. And I think it's really down to the individual of how curious do you want to be?
Yeah.
You get what I mean? It's like, how curious do you want to be?
It's such a difficult one to comprehend, isn't it? Because it kind of goes against everything that we've been taught in history and science, and it shouldn't exist. Therefore, you kind of have to put it in the back of your head, or for a lot of people, they put it in the back of their head until things come to light. And as we've seen with Congress and with the whistleblowers and some prominent people coming forward saying this is real. And certainly some people like Gary Nolan, who, when you bring science into it and you've got these really credible people
Yep,
that say, well, you can trust me because I've got science behind me, all of a sudden it
100%.
becomes this far more, you can discuss it because you're no longer in the sort of crazy box. You're now in there, well, actually, there's some science and data behind this. So I find that
Totally.
fascinating. Have you noticed an increase? I appreciate you're kind of all over the place, jet setting here and there, but have you noticed an increase in the media in different places, or is it sort of quiet in certain places uh, and more
Oh, this side of the world, you'll never hear of it.
really?
No, this side of the world, you never hear of it. But after the US report that came out, which was I think last year or the year before, when the Pentagon released that report where they were like, we can say that 144 out of 145 things that we saw are not from here. And I was just going around like crazy asking everyone, have you read it? Have you read it? Have you read it? Have you read this thing? Where because this is the first time they've openly accepted it. And still no one's going crazy about it. It's like, yeah, whatever, Uzi, you're crazy. Like, like you need to get out of your head. Like, yeah, I'm like, listen, this is not some, it's not some Hollywood film. This is It comes from a place of reality. Like the reason films like E.T. were made, it was not just made. Something happened for it to be made, right? Someone saw something, someone experienced something, someone. And then I think a few years ago, you heard of the Indiana Jones and the crystals.
Yeah.
I ended up working with someone who actually met and held one of the real crystals,
Wow.
one of the real skulls, who was actually who he knew was the daughter of the guy who found it, and she was with him when, they found one of those skulls, which was the crystal skulls that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And then I tried to somehow connect with them to do a documentary and a film. The guy I knew disappeared for a while, and then things kind of just fizzled out. So I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna go finish writing my book and take this science and take all of this and put this out of, are we living in God's head? Let's ask this question and then just put it out. But I think if you don't look, you're never gonna find. Most people, Jimmy, don't even look up at the stars.
Yeah.
So where are you going to see something that your eyes were meant to be hidden from? You're made to be hidden from. You get what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they don't even go out to look at it. Because in the most cities, it's so much light pollution. You can't even look at the stars. And it's like, if you don't even see that, like you're never going to go and find, so I was part of, by the way, the CE5 movement with the app, and I went to a couple of meetings in Canada as well because I live out of Vancouver too, so they had a few meetings out there as well, and very, very interesting with Dr. Stephen Greer's app, and talking you through it, and then also recently I came across this guy called Bashar. I don't know, and he talks about channeling.
Okay.
And I think you'll find this guy very, very, very interesting. His friend of mine showed it to me. He knew I'm gonna like go wild over it. So I was like, holy shit. But very, very interesting because he's been channeling this ET for 35, 40 years. And when he does it, he has a full open conversation with the public. His voice changes, his tone changes, everything changes. It's not this being, it's not this human anymore. It is this being. And my God, some of the questions that he has answered, bro, you will absolutely dig it. People have asked him directly, like, hey, listen, so why are you like, why are you trying to do this? Like, and then the reply comes going, no, don't you get it? We're trying to thank you. As humans, we're trying to thank you because we only exist because of you. And then someone in the audience goes, can you explain that further? He goes, so in another reality, you guys took the technology so far that everything became technological and you lost the emotion of the humanity and the human, and it became a scarce resource. And so they had to come back in time. And now the abductions will make sense to you. I say abductions because they're put in that word, which is in a negative derogatory sense, but I don't think they are. Those were basically those beings being able to come back in time, i.e., us in an alter time, being able to come back to pick us up, to use our DNA to build a hybrid species, which is them, i.e., the Greys, as et cetera, the different names. And they're basically, what how he explained it is, we are your descendants, like we exist only because of you. And I was shocked when I heard that. I was like, wow, that's never come across before, right? Like we only exist because of you. And just goes to show that we don't even understand our own DNA. I mean, we only figured out our own DNA genome code like what, a year ago, and put it together. That now we're going into the CRISPR and the DNA and all of that stuff, right? And it's like we only figured that out. And there's so much data in a human brain that now they're also seeing that if you take particles of ashes of a human, like you can find in deep microscopes what looks like the universe in there. And so I made a soundtrack called Stardust a few years ago, and it was kind of based off this theory. It was We Are Stardust. We are made from stardust, and so we are exactly what the universe is. And therefore, the question of are we living in God's head is if we're the microscopical entity of that, and if you were able to zoom out all the way, then what if the entity is the entity within the entity? And then does that make us a figment of an imagination? Well, the Matrix talks about it. Are we in a projection? Are we in a simulation? I don't think we're in a simulation, but I think time from the start to the end was written. And and again, I go back to I found answers to this in the Quran because there's open proof. The first thing that God wrote was made the pen, and the pen wrote. It's called the qalam, and the qalam wrote the book of all that is to exist. Well, if I were to ask you tomorrow to make a software, you would write what that software is to then make it, which technically is the blueprint of what is to be. And if the blueprint's written, then you could call it a simulation, but you could also say that this is the blueprint for anything and everything that could exist, which is in the multiple dimensions. So you see, we don't really understand. We don't understand where we are. We don't understand what we're doing here. People just run around
Yeah.
trying to make some money and explore whatever they have in front of them.
Mm.
So
Do
yeah,
you think that do you think that we've got can you see a reason why the government do you think the government have more information on this? Do you think that sort of private citizens
100%,
you do?
100%. It's
Yeah.
it's not even think. It's the people from there who have been sitting there have spoken about it. The people who've spoken about it who have also disappeared, but also you have ancient texts that are written, which people believe exist, that are there, which people follow for a reason.
Yeah.
And I'm like, if we have enough proof, but also there's certain things of how certain things are made. In I think near Machu Picchu, I think it's called Tiwanaku, or no, Tiwanaku is Mexico, down south near Machu Picchu. They have certain places where they found rock made out of granite, wherein it's so detailed. The way it's cut is it's so sharp that you can even cut your finger today. Like it's so sharp. But the only thing to cut granite is diamond in that detail. And if you put those designs into a computer simulation, which they tried, says it's not possible. But you have proof of half of it standing there. You have the Sakara bird, which was the wooden bird found in Africa, but they found these artifacts in Mexico that look like birds, gold, made out of real gold, right? But these birds have the wings at the bottom of them, which doesn't exist in nature. Nature has the wings in the center. So there's a video, by the way, of this, and if you can get your hands on it, you will love this. This bird, they took it, they blew up the model. So they literally didn't change any design. They took this bird, they blew it up on a 1:20 scale, and they ran it through a wind tunnel. And it passed the wind tunnel test because it's got a fin on the top. So they're like, you know what? Let's push it further. They added a propeller in the front. And there's a video of it flying. And it's like, how were they creating this stuff that literally it looks like animals because it's got these eyes or whatever on it, but it's got a fin and it's got these wings at the bottom and it's aerodynamics and the
There's,
Nazca lines.
there's too much there, isn't there? There's just too much. There's too much for them to deny it. Why do you think
Okay,
they
here's my question with the government, right? The question you asked about the government. Why did we go to the moon and leave a bunch of gold records talking? So when you go to someone or you go somewhere, you leave something in the hope that someone finds it, right? I won't go and leave something to represent my family, where I come from, my language, and all of this in a place that I know nobody is ever going to see. So we went to the moon, we left all of these things to say this is Earth, these are the languages, blah, 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 all these things. This was governmental. Everyone in the world knew this because there was messages recorded. So this is public knowledge. So when we left something, first question is why did we never go back to see if someone took it, right? Because if you leave milk out for a cat, you're going to go the next morning and see, did the cat drink the milk? right? Okay, second, the reason you left the milk out is because you know there's a cat. Why do you go to leave something on the moon if you think this doesn't exist? Isn't that bizarre?
Yeah, they know.
And that's the question. Like, of course they know. I mean, dude, Reagan spoke about this. There's live, actually, public interview in the United Nations says this is a Space Force thing, right? We have to unite everyone because if they show up, this was his words, not mine.
Yeah, yeah, famous piece. But why do they?
Yeah,
Why do you think that they're? Why do you think there's this reluctance? Like we're getting snippets from the government saying this is real, it's official, we're formal, formalizing UAP, new word, it exists. There's stuff out there. There's all these cases, and then you get like Arrow, the Alderman Anomaly Resolution Office, Sean Kirkpatrick. No, balloons, drones. Like we're kind of bouncing backwards and forwards, and I can't quite understand it because we've either got this clear path where we're slowly drip feeding the public to say yes, this is a reality, kind of get used to it, but then we're like a couple of steps back. No, it's not. It's just balloons. It's almost playing with our emotions because the people that have had experiences or that really monitor and research the subject, we know there's something. But then the other people, kind of the general public, the vast majority of people, will see snippets and think, oh, this might be real, and then Arrow will come out and say it's not, and then oh okay, it's just drones, and move on and get on with their life. Why do you think we're getting this backwards and forwards from the government?
I'm going to answer this to you in two parts. The first, do you know how the education cycle was set up? It was set up based off economy. You know, the word economy comes from the root Latin word economia, which means the study of lack, the study of lack. So the next time you hear someone say this is good for the economy, ask them who you're taking from for them to lack. The reason I say this, you will understand now, is the education system was set up, and people are not going to like me saying this, but it was set up by Rockefeller, right, on the basic instance of in an overall modern education going, I want a generation of followers, not thinkers. Now keep this in mind. If you didn't have social media today, of the power of social media, would we know that there's a genocide taking place in front of our eyes? And would the world step up in the way that they've stepped up to do whatever they can with protests, worldwide protests, blah, 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 blah? Would that have ever happened? Nope, because there have been genocides that have happened and have gone silently on. We only found out years later or through stories that have gone through families. So we're living in a time that they can't completely hide something because they understand we are somehow connected beyond their control, right? Somehow, even though we're being watched all the time and seen all the time and all of that, but still, there's a certain level of information being shared at a rate which was not being shared before. And which is why we have observed a genocide in front of our eyes. And what did they do? If you see the same time, the entire media through North America tried to hide it, even now. And then people called it out. There were kids' games coming up with advertisements saying, support the war in Israel. And there were kids going up to their parents going, oh, look, there's there's this happening. You should support it in kids' games. That is called brain control. That's taking you from here, but from the generation there. Now, because we live in this time, things are coming out. There is news footage, news media of how things have been doctored by the Israeli forces that got put out, that got caught. Would have not happened before, right? So this trickle, which you mentioned, is because of that. It's like they understand, hey, you know what? We can't treat everyone like they're completely stupid because there is a certain information out there. So, okay, give a little bit. It's like when you train your dog, right? It's like everything that you do right, I'll give you a treat. But that dog had to really work for it. Like he ran up and down the mountain and he got one treat. and then he got another one after he ran up and down that mountain. And that's the kind of path we're on. And it's go back to the basic starts of the internet. Who created it? The US Army. Why was it created? And that's what I'm talking about. It's the trickle of information is purely because you can't silence completely, but you can control the narrative.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the game. Control the narrative. That's the game. If you can control the narrative, you can control the population.
Yeah. So two question or one question in two parts. On that point, I guess, if do you think that we're going to get official, whatever official means, whatever your definition is of official, but official disclosure from the government, or do you think we're never going to get it from the government, but we don't need it because we're going to get it from private citizens, things like Soul Foundation, Galileo Project, some of the kind of private individuals that are out there working on this subject that don't have to adhere to what the government want and expect from them. Do you think we're going to see disclosure in our lifetime, and will it be from the government or from private citizens? What do you think?
Actually, I ask people the opposite question. Don't you think we already had disclosure? If that document from the Pentagon wasn't disclosure, I mean, what you want them to do? Like publish it on the front page saying, "Look who we found in our backyard." Then that's never going to happen unless something lands down and everyone's like, "Oh my God," and all the cell phones start going nuts where it's a live stream, right? But I think disclosures happened. It's just subtly happened. Now, mainstream media is already controlled, but if people were to question, and as a society, everyone started pushing that more, then I think each government has to give out more answers. But if I'm not mistaken, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, there was a little speech that the Pope had made talking about believing in extraterrestrials may be a possibility or something like that along those fronts. Like even the idea of possibility for someone of that stature to say that is almost disclosure, right? It's like it's literally put an entire faith on the line, right? And I think really disclosures happened, bro. It's just people are so lost to even care. First of all, you have to care to ask. The minute it doesn't bother you, most people don't care because it's like, hey, it doesn't affect my work, my house, my kids' school, my daily routine, whatever, bro. I don't need to know this, right?
Yeah.
I don't need to care about it. If it doesn't affect me, I don't need to care about it. And they pry on that. They feed off that. It's like, yeah, you have other things to do, like your credit cards, bro. You don't need to worry about that. What you worry about your credit score, right? So disclosures happened. I just think it's a matter of time before full contact is made. I don't think what you're talking about, the full disclosure, like I don't personally expect that to happen. No, I expect it to go from here to gradually to suddenly going, hey, guess what? Contact has just been made and people have seen it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's where we're kind of going to come to.
Yeah.
How did you get into this? I'm very curious, bro. Because, by the way, first of all, I have to say it on this. I love what you're doing. Thank you for doing what you're doing. Because there are very few people that are doing what you're doing. You take the time and the effort and what you're trying to do. I genuinely want to thank you, appreciate you.
No.
And I think a lot of people should because you're trying to spread knowledge and truth in a way. And I really hope people can see that. So I really want to know how did you or what made you say, you know
Well,
what, I'm going to set this up.
yeah. Well, thank you very much. It's very kind of you to say. I think I'm the same as many other people in that I'm almost documenting the same journey that other people are going along, but I'm just putting it out there and using the platform to do it. But I'm still learning and I'm still taking everything in, and because of the kind of community that's within the UP files and people that comment and send me messages and interact with videos and stuff, it sends me down different rabbit holes, and I get to learn about new things. Like, I mean, yourself, as you've been talking, I've been, taking notes on, well, I'm going to look at that. We're going to have a look at that picture and find that.
Oh.
So it's through talking to different people that I learn about new things, and then that takes me off onto a different journey, and I've met new people. And so I find it fascinating. I think for me, it's similar to yourself. I had an interest from a very young age, but it was, but life gets in the way and you're in your own bubble. And then sort of 2017 New York Times article, that reignited things. But again, it's interesting all of a sudden, and then slowly life gets back in the way, and it's sort of put it in the back of your mind. And I think
Mm.
it's reignited with David Grush and the Congress and all of these people coming forward from really credible positions, saying, "No, this is real. You should pay attention to this." And that was it. I was hooked, and so this kind of platform was an outlet for me to put my
Did your
thoughts.
friends tell you you're crazy?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's a, my friendship group, they make fun of it, but I've said this a few times in podcasts that later on they'll come to me and say, "But actually, I agree." And in front of everybody else, it's, "Oh, that's silly," and they'll make the jokes, but then later on, "I've had this experience actually, or I've seen this thing, or there's got to be life out there's got to be teeming with life." So I think that's you know that's the general public. The general public is, at the moment, this is a funny subject and there's a bit of stigma around it, so we'll make light of it, make a joke of it. But if you talk to me, later on behind the scenes, you talk to me alone, I'll tell you exactly what I think, and I completely agree. That's the kind of impression I get. So that's it. And I find it
Have you ever had a personal experience?
I have not. No, I haven't. I haven't had a personal experience, but on my journey, I've spoken to people who I almost, as they're telling me their story, I'm visualizing it and I'm almost experiencing it as well. And I spoke to, I think one of the most profound conversations that I had was with Tony Dean Smith, who's a director out in Canada, and lovely guy, really, really nice guy. And he was telling me the story of his family. He was out in, I think, South Africa when he was a kid, and they were on sort of a safari type thing, and they saw this massive skyscraper-sized craft above them. And he tells the story of his dad and his sort of accent, and he sort of does the accent. It's quite funny, and I'm kind of visualizing this, thinking that's incredible. And you've got your family there, you've all seen it, and
Yeah.
you talk about it for years afterwards, and it's so profound. And he explained it in such an honest way. And we'd spoken before the podcast for quite a while. And I really wanted to get it on film and have that conversation with him so that we could document it. But I've had many of those similar type of conversations with people who are just honest to genuine people that have had this incredible experience. And you think, how does the world not know about this person's experience? Because I know about it now, and I completely believe them. Completely, they've had that experience, and especially when they've had it with more than one person. Like, I don't think that there is such a thing as like a group delusion. I just don't think it's possible. Some of the debunkers and the skeptics will say to you, "Oh, it's this mass delusion." Like, what are you talking about? There's no science behind mass delusion, seeing the exact same thing, remembering it for all of those years. It's just, yeah, I don't,
And one, two, three, 100, 200, how many people can be lying about? Like, and why? Like, why would I tell you I saw this triangular shaped thing with orange and green lights for 45 minutes up and down? And and then how have I seen the exact same thing on someone else's footage? And then on another corner of the world, like on footage. And then you had the Pentagon take it out. Like, are they lying? Like my question at that point is, how many are lying? Like, let's go all the way. You think every one of those people and all the sightings that were live on video and everything, everyone is lied? That's that's pretty crazy for, for everyone to be lying about the same thing. Like, yeah, it's nutty. I just wish people, here's the thing. If they added it to the history books and taught that as a course in high school, you would have a generation that would come out way more grounded to this opinion, that would not be having to have a podcast of, oh my God, like the way you and I are, but that would be an everyday conversation between each other. And automatically their frequency would be raised because what they would have is they would grow up with empathy
Yeah.
for it. And I think that's what's needed. It's put that as the curriculum. Like, hey, we're going to teach you a UAP class as part of history, where we're going to show you and do visually and document all the sightings that are official,
Absolutely.
verified by at least five sources, or 10 sources, whatever. And so it's not just one man's word or two people's words, but put it out there so you have the next generation going, oh yeah, this is completely possible because in their generation, it's probably going to be way more possible than yours and mine. And you better prep them of how to deal with it, right?
And it's excitement, isn't it? It's like me with space exploration when I was younger, the thought of astronauts going to space and what was possible was just, and it creates that science and engineering interest in your mind, and you just,
It's Space Explorers. It was NASA's first most detailed VR journey of the International Space Station, where you could literally walk around.
I need to check this out.
And yeah, it's an immersive, fully immersive experience. And bro, it's crazy because that's all I've ever cared about. It's like I want to go to space. Not for anything else, because I'm like I'm kind of tired of what Earth is doing to Earth. I think they're doing way better by by being out there.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, I mean, I completely agree. And I've got a project on the go at the moment, very early stages, where I'm creating a cartoon with some with similar cases, like as you say, the credible cases, and it's not going to be too preachy. It's not this is what it is. It's well, this happened, and this is what these people have said. This is what some of the official people have said, and here's what some of the evidence, and just short bite-sized pieces for kids, very child friendly, not too scary, just historic stuff so that's kind of in that space for kids because there's so much nonsense on kids TV and kids YouTube and just mind-numbing nonsense, and here's some stuff to make you excited about the future and the possibilities and what could be out there, and that's a project I'm looking at the moment. But
That's awesome, bro. I look forward to it. And if you ever need anything that I can help with, let me know. Um, but don't you think you and I grew up on those kind of cartoons and projects? Like, look at stuff like the Jetsons,
yeah,
right? So out there, so like it's literally living with robotics, which was happening now. In fact, I saw a machine just yesterday. Someone sent me a link off on Instagram that's called the Jetson, by the way. It's actually called the Jetson. That looks very similar to the Jetsons kind of machine. It's not a hovercraft, but it's like a flying kind of machine. And it's called the Jetson. It looks like that. We're living in an age where humanoids are coming out. But we grew up on that stuff, didn't we? Like it's like someone put it out there. Like E.T. I mean, you have this brilliant film. It's out there. Artificial intelligence is out there. And yet people will not even question or bother to question. Uh, but again, it's so well hidden. It's so well covered up that nobody has the time to ask about it unless, as you said, it comes right in your face, like, someone knocking at your door and it's like, hi, this is who I am. And then you would be like, oh my God. It's like, it's like getting slapped in the face. And then you're like, oh, I got slapped in the face. Um, and I think that's what kind of people are waiting for. And I find it really stupid because it's like, if that's what you're waiting for, that's not going to happen.
yeah. And that's the thing. I think I feel a sense of responsibility to because I'm in this space and there's a bit of a platform there. I feel like it's kind of my job to what can I do? What can I do to make people more aware of what I'm aware of? And obviously I'm deeper into the subject. But I find it fascinating that people like yourself and other people that have had experiences and had an interest and sort of researched this subject have these ideas of, well, how can I bring this about? How can I include it in my art? And I see that so much with people that have had these experiences or had the interest, certainly, who then it just makes its way, it just manifests its way into their work. And all of a sudden, yeah, I've got this film out, I've got this book out, I've got this, this art, I'm doing the podcast, whatever it is, it finds its way to the light. And I think it's fascinating. But I certainly have, I don't know about yourself, but I certainly almost feel the sense of responsibility to keep pushing forward, keep pushing things
Yeah,
forward.
that's why I started writing this book of Are We Living in God's Head? It was me really taking a non-biased, completely non-biased approach. And therefore it was just a question that I asked myself and then said, okay, you know what? Let me break this down, but from all perspectives, which is why I went down every religious path, every religious book, because I personally believe that all religious texts, the verified ones, not the human editions, came from the same source. I truly, truly believe that. And the funny enough is, if you, as a Muslim, it's impossible for me to say who I am without believing in Judaism and Christianity, because we believe in multiple books. We believe that this is come from the same source. You have proof of this that's come from the same source. And funny enough, the last book, the Quran, came as audio. That's therefore a frequency. It came as sound, wasn't written. You can go anywhere in the world. There's no other version of this book. Isn't that crazy? There's no volume one, version one, not even an alphabet. I mean a single alphabet. Anywhere on earth is different in the same book. And I'm like, because it came as sound, came as audio, and therefore frequency. The Vedas, the original Vedic text from 3,000 years ago, came as audio, came as sound. And it's the same thing. It's if you understand that, by the way, what travels faster than the speed of light?
Sound? I don't know. My science is bad.
So sound slower than the speed of light. Light, only thing that travels faster, speed of thought.
Hmm, interesting.
See
Interesting.
what I mean? So if we were today to come up with a machine that can travel at light speed, it would still take you so long to go to the next galaxy that your body wouldn't make it. And so how do you do that? Either you, as you see in films like Star Trek, where you warp time and space, which a company is already doing, by the way. They've built literally a replica of the warp machine. Yeah, they're actually already in full research of it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And the idea is basically that machine or the warp machine doesn't move, it moves time around it, right? We're just understanding how black holes function. We're just understanding these things. And again, nobody's questioning that. It's right there. It's right there. All you got to do is just go, hey, what is that? And you probably get an answer to it. But I'm also curious, what do you do? What's the day job? What's beyond this? Like like I want to know how do you link this to, because you're deeper than me into it because you're talking to so many people. Like I would go nuts, bro. I wouldn't do anything else with my life.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I do feel like I am. I do a few things, but my main thing is like electrician. I like to say electrical engineer because it sounds posh, but it's electrician. Um,
Yeah,
3 kids, and yeah, so I do it in
three
my
kids. MashaAllah, amazing, beautiful.
3 dogs, 3 kids. I've just got a
Wow.
So yeah, I'm a busy guy, but I love it, and it's my passion and it's my interest, and I love the ability to talk to people. So the UFO UAP stuff, the videos, the clips, things that are happening in the news, that's fairly. It just comes to you because you see things, you follow things. The algorithms help you out with that. People send you things, but
Yeah,
the podcast and the ability to talk to people, that's what I really, really enjoy because I would never have had the opportunity to talk to somebody like yourself in Dubai or in Canada or in America and in Spain, all these different places. And I'm talking to these really interesting, fascinating people, all because of this subject. And I really enjoy that. Excuse me. I think that's one of my favorite things is that ability to connect with different people. And so yeah, it's kind
by
of
the way, whereabouts are you based in London? London or
I'm in Lincolnshire. So
Lincolnshire? Okay, cool.
Midland.
I might be visiting the UK next month. I might be in London and Nottingham for a bit. Um, have you
Sounds.
ever thought about actually doing this a like a solid TV show?
I would, yeah. I mean, I'd love to. I'd love to, but it's one of those things that I'm new to the content creation side of things. I'm learning as I go. I'd love to, I would love to.
Or even like a documentary? Because I would absolutely love to direct a documentary that we can go down a path of really going through or going to the places, uh, or to the people. And because here's the thing, the visual proof, you're not going to find it around you in my house.
Yeah,
Even though once in a while those anomalies and it happens. But if you really, really dig, you got to go to the outside.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
that's one of the reasons why I love nature. That's one of the reasons I go out camping a lot. That's one of the reasons I go out a lot. Because I'm like, that's where there's a reason the First Nation and Indigenous people are so connected. It's because you speak to Indigenous people and they'll tell you, yeah, of course they're there. Like, they won't even hesitate, by the way, in their culture. Speak to kids, speak to adults. And it's so like, oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, of course there are other beings. What do you mean? Like, we know that. And they'll tell you they have different names for them. And it's so common in their culture and practice. And I'm like, wait, you guys don't even like it's just part of your culture. Like, yeah, of course it is. Like we know it's that, but yeah, these guys are trying to take it away, trying to brainwash it to make sure. Of course, they can't be because then that makes you less superior as a human, and then the power of money gets diminished because money and kind of fight what's on the other side. Do you get what I mean? And
yeah.
so it's basically comes down to again what I told you, economy, right? Who are you taking from? Comes down to that.
Pay your
Yeah, man.
taxes. As long as you pay your taxes, we're happy. Just pay your taxes. Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? What if we didn't need governments and what if we could be as one and come together as a race? That's the worry, I think, from their perspective, is the element of control that.
Yeah, 100%. Because that's why I said we all come from the same source. Go back all the way. I don't care what you believe in, whether even if you're an atheist. Amazing. If you're an atheist, I believe you as much as you believe yourself. Amazing. Go back up the lineage. You're going to come to Adam. Cool. What does that tell you? Like, where are we coming from? Same source. Things could have split after. Amazing. Great. Keep going back. You're going to come back to the same source. So we came from the same source. We were made from the same source. It's like, and then who came up with the division? Why don't people question that? You
Yeah,
know, it's borders were only drawn by people. Like borders were only drawn by people. Nature didn't draw them. We did. So
absolutely.
animals don't know that. Animals don't need a passport to fly from here to there. A bird can just fly.
Yeah, very true. Very true.
Mm. Yeah,
Uzi,
man.
I'm conscious of your time, man, and
Thank you.
it's been great talking to you, man. You're such a cool dude.
No, thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you, man.
Um,
Me too. Appreciate it.
Hopefully, we'll get another opportunity to talk again in the future, and certainly stay in touch. I really hope we do. And
Absolutely. No, absolutely. Just let me know. I would love to have this conversation. There's very few people you can have these conversations openly with. So I absolutely love that you reached out. So thank you so much, by the way. Really, thank you for reaching out and doing this. And somewhere inside me, you helped spark that craziness of, being able to go, okay, yeah, there's other people out there just as, thirsty for this. Because otherwise in normal society, it's just, you in the center of everyone trying to live life. And so very, very, very grateful to you for that. So thank you. And definitely keep in touch. I hope definitely we have to do this again. And we have to let's brainstorm again. We should do this a step further. We should make a film or something about this because I really think from all the footage that you have, um, and everyone's recordings that you have, we could definitely put together a solid documentary because it's gonna tell the story.
awesome, sounds amazing, man.
Yeah. Yeah,
Uzi,
thanks, man. Appreciate it.
thank you. I appreciate you, man,
Take
and
care. Good
dude.
luck with the dogs. Good luck with the kids. And yeah, good luck with the family.